In 2013, a mysterious pandemic spreads across the earth. Humanity develops an illogical fear of open spaces, which causes death within a second. Shortly, the entire global crowd is trapped inside buildings. As Barcelona descends into chaos, Mark sets off on a hunt to find Julia, his missing loving wife, without ever venturing outdoors. Welcome to Movie Chapter On. Today, I'm gonna recap a movie called The Last Days. Spanish name Los Últimos Días is a 2013 Spanish science fiction suspense film directed by David and Alex Pastor. Its IMDb rate 6.1 out of 10. So, let's start the story.
The story begins in the future, when a terrible virus appeared on the Earth, but it was not a common virus. It's a very terrible virus because if a person is infected with this virus, he dies without any reason. Actually, there is a kind of fear in the minds, so whenever a person infected with the virus, the fear works in him and he dies instantly due to excessive fear. In a very short time, the virus spreads all over the world. Slowly, all the streets, villages, towns, everything became quiet. There was no sign of any people around. Ever since the virus began to spread, no one has come out, meaning that all the people who are still alive are where they were. Working people in their offices, students in their school, college, and those who were at home are at home because the virus has spread so fast that no one can get out of their place, so they stay where they are. It's been about 3 months since the virus was discovered, but no cure for the virus has been found so far. Those people have not been able to return to their homes yet. Then we see a person named Mark working in an office. He was working in his office that day. He was trapped here. Mark has his wife Julia at home, who has not been seen for about 3 months since he was imprisoned here for 3 months with others. He was very worried about his wife, and then he went to fetch her breakfast. In fact, all the employees were given food at a certain place in his office because they could not survive without food. They had to eat to survive. Either all the employees of the office were busy with their work. Meanwhile, while eating a loaf of bread, he came to their office telephone and called his house numbers so that he could contact his wife. But to no avail, because they were not working on their office telephone. There is a problem with the telephone line in the whole city, and since no one can go outside, it is not possible to fix the telephone line in such a situation. Then he goes to a window and sees that his city has completely changed. There is not even a shadow of a man around. Even their whole city seems to have been destroyed. He could not believe his own eyes. At that moment, his colleague came to him and told him to go to the underground floor of their office because it was time for him to go to work. They are building a road under the ground as an alternative to those roads so that they can walk on this road instead of going out. Mark was making a tunnel. Suddenly he saw a hole in it and realized that there is a metro railroad behind the tunnel, which he was very happy to see in the underground market. In that time, asked them to stand in line for food. That's why all the employees of the office stand in line. One by one they were all lined up to eat. While Mark was waiting there, a former officer in their office was standing with Mark. His name is Enrique. He hurriedly hid one thing in his bag, but Mark saw it. Mark noticed that Enrique was hiding a GPS in his bag, a device that acts as a satellite system, helping to locate any object or place. Mark then asks about his GPS, but Enrique doesn't answer him but ignores it and leaves. Then we see the incident a few months ago when there was no virus in the world. At that time, Mark was working in his office as a computer engineer and Enrique was working as their officer. Enrique always treated his office staff badly, so everyone in the office was afraid of him. One day, Enrique calls Mark to his chamber because he has given him a project a few days ago. Enrique told him, "Did you complete the project I gave you?" Mark says, "In fact, I have completed a lot, but this work is very difficult, so it will take me a few more days." Enrique gets very angry when he hears this and says, "I can't give you another day. Today you will complete the project for me, and if you don't give me, then you won't have any job." Mark tries hard to explain, but Enrique doesn't want to listen to him. Mark is very anxious, so Mark stays in the office all night because he has to save his job anyway. Meanwhile, his wife Julia was thinking a lot for him. He was calling her repeatedly, but Mark could not receive her call due to extra work pressure. Almost last night, Mark returns to his house and finds Julia is not asleep yet. She is sitting and making a doll. In fact, Julia has a hobby where she sells her own handmade dolls. Although she makes many beautiful dolls, she does not have many customers in her shop. Julia shows Mark a doll she has made herself and says if we have kids we will be as cute as the doll. But Mark is not happy about it. Julia has wanted to have a baby for a long time. But Mark doesn't want to have a baby now because he earns little money from his job, and with that much money, they can't afford to have a baby. A lot of money will be needed. So Mark wanted to have a baby after his promotion, but Julia doesn't want to understand the issue. So they have been arguing about it many times, and even today Julia is angry with Mark. After a while, the two of them go to bed together, but Mark is not getting any sleep. He is always very worried and anxious. Is it possible to sleep with so much anxiety? So Mark didn't sleep and started watching the news on television where a 16-year-old boy was being shown. The boy's name was Den. Den had been suffering from a disease called agoraphobia for about 6 months, which made him afraid to go out. There was a time when the virus started appearing on the earth, and people were suffering from a disease called agoraphobia. That's why he hasn't been out of the house for about 6 months, and he committed suicide last night because he couldn't bear the pain. Mark was very surprised to see the news, and arriving at his office in the morning, he sees that the news about the boy is showing here. Everybody there was talking about the boy. They were all watching television together, at which point he noticed a man named Mark Robera. He looked so scared. He may not return to her home for several days because he has been wearing the same clothes for about 6 days. Mark notices this but doesn't realize what happened to Robera. However, he later realized that Robera had contracted the virus like that boy, which caused him to have agoraphobia, which prevented him from leaving the office. Then we see the present time where Mark was talking to Enrique about GPS. In fact, the GPS on their phone has stopped working. Their phone is not working properly. Enrique has had a hard time getting the GPS that he has because he will be able to reach his home with the help of that GPS. In fact, they can't go out if they want to because now they have to walk on the underground. But they don't know the road under the ground, so they need GPS to get home. Enrique tells Mark that you don't tell anyone that I have GPS, otherwise everyone will take the GPS from me. Because GPS is what everyone needs now. Then Mark says to Enrique, I also have some essentials that I have been collecting for quite some time. So the two of us can use our things together to help each other reach their respective destinations, so that you two can return to your home and I to my wife. I can go back. Enrique, meanwhile, needs to go to a place called Olympia, but he didn't tell Mark first. Because he is Mark's boss, can he be humble to Mark anymore? So he disagreed, and when wants to leave, then he blackmailed him and told Enrique, if you do not agree with me, I will tell everyone that you have GPS. Then he agrees, and the two of them go on the metro road first, and then they start their journey. After a while, they reach the metro station, which has now become the home of many people because many people of the city have started living here to protect themselves from the virus. Mark and Enrique were watching everything around, but suddenly a snatcher came in and snatched the bag where he had his GPS. Enrique and Mark chase after the snatcher. As a result, they reached a secluded area with the looters. Everyone here was a member of the kidnapping gang. They started fighting with Enrique and Mark, even trying to snatch everything from them. They both deal with their confidence as they choose to embark on their play activities. Then they get a much bigger chance when the whole town's light off. They attack the snatching team and Enrique kills their team leader. Back to the previous scene, we see that one morning Mark wakes up and gets ready to go to the office. Then he leaves his room, at which point he hears a strange noise from the flat next to them. So he opens the door of the flat and sees the whole house has become dirty. Mark then goes inside the flat. Looking at it, it looks like maybe a few months of rubbish has accumulated here. The man in the flat actually had an agoraphobia, so he did all his work inside the house, even throwing garbage in the house. But Mark didn't understand anything at that time. So he went to his office and saw that two employees forcibly took Robera away because they learned that Robera had been inside the office for about 8 days, not even going to his home. But they didn't know he was actually infected. That's why he was afraid to go out. He didn't want to go out at all, but the employees didn't listen to him anymore. They forced him out. Robert is terrified, and he dies there out of sheer fear. Everyone was surprised to see this scene because they did not understand how a person could actually die due to going outside. Mark is also very surprised here. When he returns home at night, he tells Julia about it and says that there are strange things happening around us that we don't know about, but it seems to me that some great danger is about to come. He gets very worried, but Julia tries to make him understand a lot. She tells Mark that nothing like this will happen. Then she hugs Mark and then they spend some time together with love. Then we see the present time. They start their journey again on the Metro Railroad. They stop in the middle of the road and take a break. Mark asks Enrique why he wants to go to the Olympiad. Enrique doesn't tell him anything, but he ignores him. He then shows Mark a polythene bag containing a lot of vegetable and fruit seeds, which Enrique collects all the way. After walking a few more kilometers, they came to a sewer. There was no road in front of them except the sewer, so they fell into the sewer without delay. There is no other road in front of them. Mark finds out the location of his house using GPS here. Mark had a small gas cylinder in his bag which he had collected a few days ago. Since there was no road in front of them, they had to explode the gas cylinder and make a road there. They both blasted the cylinder, which caused a huge explosion. As a result of this explosion, they found a road there. Mark reached his house on the way. About 3 months later, Mark returned to his home. He then knocks on the door, but sees that Julia is not in his house, but some unknown people have occupied his house. Mark thinks they've kidnapped Julia, so he was going to kill them. At that time, the person named Jack told him that I have not been able to get out and even return to my home. We are infected with the virus. Mark then understands the matter. Then he shows them a picture of Julia and asks them about Julia, but they tell him that when they took shelter in this flat there was no one here. The whole flat was empty. Meanwhile, he was looking around. She sees some birds in the kitchen that Jack has kept for his family to eat. Enrique then finds some corn kernels there. Then he takes the corn kernels with him. He then finds an ultrasound report that Julia had. Then he realized that Julia was actually pregnant. Here we see a flashback again when Julia and Mark first found out about the virus. They could actually find out about it through the news. The news showed that a terrible virus has spread in the world and lots of people are constantly dying due to this virus. This makes her even more worried, but then Julia tells Mark again to have a baby. In fact, Julia didn't know that she was already pregnant, but Mark got very angry when he heard about it, so there was a lot of quarrel between the two of them that day. Mark was walking out of the house to his office, but today he sees that the streets are very empty and not a single person can be seen. Everyone in Mark's office was watching the news, but Mark was upset because he had an argument with Julia. Mark regrets a lot, and he realizes his mistake, so he calls Julia to say sorry, but Julia's girlfriend Ria receives the call. Then Mark asks her, "Where is Julia?" Ria says Julia is actually dizzy and faints, so I brought her to the hospital. Mark is terrified when he hears this, and as soon as he goes out to see Julia, he realizes that he is scared when he goes out, meaning that he too has been infected with the virus. Mark was terrified, but he somehow got into his office. Then we see the present time. Mark sees it suddenly raining outside. Then Enrique and Mark collect water from the rain with a plastic bucket. Not only them, but everyone in the building is doing the same thing because they did not have clean water. They are living by drinking unclean water. At night, Enrique and Mark take some essentials with them as much as possible and they start their journey again, but there is a little quarrel between them here because Mark now wanted to go to the place where Julia works because Mark thought Julia was stuck there, but Enrique now he doesn't want to go there, but he wants to go to Olympia. They were arguing over this issue. At one point their quarrel went to a very serious stage, so they started fighting with each other, but after a while their flashlight broke due to them and their fight stopped immediately. For a while they sat there in silence. Enrique then tells Mark that I actually want to go to a hospital in Olympia where my father is. My father had been sick for a long time, but after the virus came I could not see him anymore. I only want to see my dad once. I promise you, Mark. Once I meet my dad, I'll give you my GPS and then go wherever you want. Mark then agrees with Enrique. The two then set off for Olympia. After walking a long way, they come to a church. Then they decide to spend the night here. They make a fire to make light. The place was very dark, but suddenly a bear came and attacked the two of them. The bear was about to kill Enrique. Then Mark came and killed the bear. In this way, he saves Enrique's life. Then they cook the bear's meat and use it to satisfy their hunger. While eating, they were talking to each other. Their stories were from that time when there was no virus in the world. Mark learns that Enrique is not married yet because he has given all the time to his ailing father. He has no one but Enrique's father, so he loves his father very much. Here they know a lot about each other and a friendly relationship is formed between them while talking. The next morning, they continued on that sewer road and after a while they reached a building. The Olympia Hospital is very close to here, and when they saw a few people standing there, they learned from them that the hospital, where her father was staying, had caught fire and everything was burnt in that hospital, and no one could get out due to the virus. When Enrique heard this, he almost went mad and went to the top of the building from where they could see the view from outside. Enrique is devastated because Enrique has no one else in the world, so he doesn't want to live anymore. So he tries to commit suicide, but Mark manages to save him. Enrique then tells Mark to stop thinking about himself. Now your job is to find Julia. I could not save my father, but you will save your wife and child. Mark is very surprised and says I don't have any children. Then Enrique informs him that Julia is pregnant. Enrique then gives Mark his GPS. He even gives him the seeds he collected and says I know one day these seeds will come in handy. You go to rescue Julia with these. Don't worry about me, but Mark didn't want to leave him alone, but he agreed to leave for Julia. Then Mark moved to the building where Julia worked. He could easily get in there. He saw that everything here was in disarray. All around was very quiet, but he was moving forward ignoring everything. Mark looks around for Julia, but suddenly he remembers that Julia has a shop on the first floor of the building, and Julia may be there. So he goes there without delay, but he can't find Julia there. He saw a glass where something is written there. Julia's friend, Ria, wrote there that we are in the supermarket. Mark then thinks that he might find Julia in the supermarket, so he sets off for the supermarket. On the way they saw a group of people. They were not allowing Mark to go forward because they had an enemy group. They think Mark is a member of that group, and then Mark shows them a picture of Julia. He tells them everything, and they realize that Mark is not their enemy. They want to see if there is a person named Julia in their group, but at that time all of them are attacked by their enemy. So there is a lot of fighting going on between the two sides, and most of the people on both sides die because of this fight. Mark learns that Ria is here and she has been surviving with the team for a long time. Mark then asks Ria about Julia. Ria says Julia was actually pregnant that day. So he became dizzy and fainted. Then I went to some supermarkets and we got stuck there, but after a while I started working with this group, but I kept her in the supermarket as she was very pregnant. You can get there by road under the ground. Julia is there now. She has been waiting for you for a long time. Ria was then taking Mark to Julia, but just then a wall collapsed on Ria and she died there. At that moment, Mark was attacked by an enemy group. He was about to kill Mark, but just then Enrique arrives and saves Mark. The assailant became very angry and stabbed Enrique in the chest. Mark doesn't even see it and hides his wounds from Mark. Then Enrique wants to go find Julia with him. Mark is very happy about this. Then they reach the supermarket through the underground road. They then proceeded to an auditorium to search from there. And it was on the top floor of the mall, but they couldn't find Julia anywhere, so Mark thinks he might not find Julia anymore, so he stands there upset, but suddenly he sees Julia in a building in front of them. He is so happy that even Julia sees him. She started crying happily. Mark then ran to tell Enrique that he had found Julia, but he saw that Enrique's condition had gotten worse and there was a lot of blood on his chest. I have been able to reach a person to the person he loves. Nothing could be further from the truth, Enrique said. Mark suffers a lot from this. He then slowly fell to death. Then he ran to the mall door. Now Julia and Mark are standing on two sides. Mark then gives himself courage and starts walking towards Julia so that his head starts spinning even though blood is coming out of his ears, but still he doesn't give up. She will go anyway. So he keeps walking towards Julia despite the pain and watching her. He somehow managed to reach Julia. After about 3 months, they were able to come to the two of them. They were both very happy, then they started living there together. A few months later, Julia gave birth to a son. They keep the name of their child Enrique, so that they will never forget Enrique's reward, even the seeds that Enrique gave to Mark. They cultivate in their home in a greenhouse manner. When Mark's son Enrique learns to walk, he goes out by mistake, but nothing happens to Enrique, meaning Enrique is free of agoraphobia. When Enrique is 13 years old, he is approached by many boys and girls his age. In fact, all the children born after the virus do not have agoraphobia in their bodies. So these boys and girls want to build a healthy human civilization with people like them. The next generation lives a healthy and normal life. Mark and Julia then send their only child in search of a healthy world. This is where the movie ends.